What do you think of the report that, if it is a report, that the Niners would be interested in Kirk Cousins if he were to become available in a trade?
Okay, so this has kind of been shut down, right? Like Ian Rappaport went on Pat McAfee's show and said, I don't think so. And then Javi Vega posted on Twitter, and it's a good interview with Matt Mayoko and Sage Rosenfels, and they talk about Kirk Cousins, and Sage Rosenfels basically kind of dismisses the idea that he thinks that Kyle would no longer be obsessed.
Just so people know, Sage Rosenfeld says, it's my opinion that I don't think it's the best fit anymore. Yeah. And that's basically what Rappaport said as well. Not that he heard it, just it doesn't sound, and that often means that they heard it, but they didn't phrase it that way. That's all I'm saying. And the report is some guy with like 6,000 followers. So it's all very flimsy.
Right. And with Rosenfels, just another thing to keep an eye on is when I listened to him talk about it from that context, what I gathered was he had been talking to Kubiak rather than Shanahan. And from talking to Kubiak, it felt like he didn't have the best opinion and was gathering the best opinion of Kirk Cousins, which would then, his speculation was basically that if Shanahan spoke to Gary Kubiak now, he might not be as enamored with Kirk Cousins. That was his final conclusion. But it's out there, so let's talk about it, right? And so, in my opinion, this is not going to happen. With Minnesota, I just don't see how they can trade him. I don't see what their plan is if they trade him. I don't know what they would do because they got this veteran team that they kind of just retooled, and they have picks and everything, but I don't think they're at a point where they can just press the reset button. They can maybe do that next year with Kirk Cousins or the year after. We'll see, but I just don't see this happening. In terms of his fit for the 49ers, I would say that you got to look at him as he would be a Ryan Tannehill for them. I don't think he's as good as Ryan Tannehill, but I think that's the guy you got to think of, where really good executor of the scheme, goes to the right spot with the football most of the time, if not all the time, can make every single throw that's necessary for this offense, really good off play action, just a really solid player. To me, Ryan Tannehill offers more in terms of how athletic he is and his arm, but Kirk Cousins is a really solid player. And yes, in my opinion, he would be an upgrade. I know the reservations everybody has, and I have the same ones when it comes to Kirk Cousins. You never want to see a franchise-level quarterback, especially a guy like Cousins, who's been a top 15 type quarterback the past 5 years, get ripped by teammates for absolutely no reason. You know, there was the Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen ripped him after a Bears game last year, and he publicly apologized, kind of a weird thing to do. And then just a couple weeks ago, Everson Griffin took 2 gratuitous shots at him like that. Kirk Cousins wasn't in the conversation. He wasn't playing. It was during Wild Card Weekend, and he just decided to string off 3 tweets about how Zimmer doesn't like Kirk Cousins. He doesn't like Kirk Cousins. Nobody likes Kirk Cousins, and just went at him that way. So for those reasons,
also, there's more. His personality is big, but there's also the fact that, and it's the same thing with Stafford. I think Stafford and Cousins are very similar. Because they both have big arms. They both can execute, but they both are guys in their early 30s that have this long track record, whether it's their fault or not, of not winning against winning teams, not winning in prime time, not winning against winning teams. They both have losing by bad records against winning teams. And it's like, it may not be their fault, but if you're moving off of Jimmy to bring in a new guy, you're moving off of Jimmy so you can win the big one.
Right.
And you have these questions.
In my opinion, those are things people sell to fans. I don't believe that, because I think you have to look at each individual game. You can't generalize a sample size. You know, you got to look at different games. Like, I've seen Monday Night Football games where you can look back and say, well, Kirk Cousins really did nothing wrong here. And
You're right. Hold on. But before you just write it off, Kirk Cousins is 8-36 against winning teams, and Matthew Stafford is 10-66. I mean, that's a bigger sample size than Jimmy Garoppolo's entire career. So there's something there. I'm not putting it all on them. Obviously, Stafford's played for a terrible franchise, but these are questions you would have if you were to bring these guys in. Like,
sure,
is there something there?
Sure, I see. I don't like
big
that.
Sample size.
In my opinion, I'll just speak from my own personal standpoint. I don't really like taking that into account. I don't really like that because, like, you take a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, he had a 2-0 playoff record prior to the Super Bowl, completing 16 passes and throwing 26 passes. So it's like when you look at stuff like that, taking wins and losses and taking it away from the quarterback, like you got to isolate every single variable and just look at the quarterback. So I don't think it's fair to do that to Kirk Cousins. Or
I just think it's
fair to
amazing that
do that to
Stafford is
Matthew
actually 64, 24-1 against winning teams and 10-66 against, against losing teams and 10-66. That's amazing. But we're not talking about Stafford. Okay, look, I agree. Cousins is a better player, even though Cousins has this weird thing where he doesn't win on prime time and doesn't beat winning teams, and it's not all his fault. You put him with Shanahan. I think he's a better player than Garoppolo, not just because he's more durable, but because he's more physically gifted. He has a stronger arm. He's more accurate. His mechanics are better.
Smarter.
He's a smarter player, and he's more mobile. He's a better player. He's a lot like Stafford.
I think, huh?
He's a lot like Stafford. If you like Stafford, Cousins is kind of similar. He's not as gifted. I mean, no one's really as gifted as Stafford except for Allen, but dude, the guy throws a nice deep ball.
I think the one detail that's the big difference between Stafford and Cousins is from the standpoint of Cousins kind of has been able to fill in, especially the last 4 years or so, into the system that suits him, right? The system that suits him and the system that he can be best at. And I think he ceilings out as a quarterback that's somewhere 13 to 15 in the NFL, and that's exactly where he is right now. And he can ceiling out only in this particular system, which is the Kyle Shanahan, the Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan system.
Yep.
And he had success early with McVay running this system. He had success with Stefanski. He's had success with Kubiak. So in my opinion, with Stafford, he's not been put into a quarterback-friendly. I mean, everybody calls this a quarterback-friendly. It's quote-unquote quarterback-friendly system because a lot of the throws and process is schemed up in this system. So because of that, I don't think Stafford's ever been put into such a situation. But this isn't to compare Stafford and Cousins. The bottom line is, I think Cousins would be an upgrade, but is Cousins worth trading a couple picks for when you have Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't exactly know that. And it's because, we've had to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo every single time I've been on here, and I've been mostly critical rather than flattering. But, Jimmy Garoppolo still is a solid player. He's still a good quarterback, or an okay quarterback that you can win with. And for that reason, I ultimately think that, he, as good as I think Cousins is, and I think he would be an upgrade in this system, I don't think he's worth trading any sort of money. You seem to be having kind of.
I'm sorry. I was looking at Matthew Stafford's career splits, and they're all messed up. But I'm looking at him year by year, and yeah, I mean, he can do play action. He's better with play action. He doesn't get to do it very much. It's a really good point. Kirk Cousins is like a product of a system and a play action. And the whole idea is Stafford has never had any of that. Put him in that. But again, Stafford's career QB rating is 88. Cousins is 97. Maybe in this system, Stafford gets bumped up to about that level, or maybe a little bit above it. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
That's always been my point.
Yeah.
They're similar level players right now. If I was to rank the 15 best quarterbacks in the NFL, they're going to fall very close to each other. If I started ranking them, I think Stafford would be about 12 or 13 and Cousins would be 15. But in my opinion, you put Stafford in McVay's system, Stafford boosts to 8 or 7 or 8 and Cousins still stays at 15.
All right, let's focus this Cousins discussion real quick before we move on. Do you think that there's a regardless of what Rosenfels and Rappaport said, do you think there's a possibility here? Do you think this is something the Niners should pursue? And what's the price?
Look, unless the price is where it's just you trade Jimmy and you're trading a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick, I'd do that. Because to me, Jimmy plus a 5th round pick is equal to Kirk Cousins. Or Jimmy straight up for Kirk Cousins. I would do that.
I'm good with that.
But if it's trading anything beyond that, absolutely not. I don't see why it's worth it. And, I just don't see with Kirk Cousins the enamoration where you to me, Matthew Stafford, from a physical standpoint, you see a ceiling that you can never hit with Jimmy. To me, Kirk Cousins is kind of maxed out his capability, and that capability is being better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but not by enough for me to say, hey, let's just trade the farm and go get him because Jimmy's the problem. So let's just trade Jimmy in a second and go get Kirk. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm with you. Before we move on, no, don't do that. And again, I want to talk to Kyle. Kyle, Don't trade for Kirk Cousins. Unless you can trade Jimmy Garoppolo straight up, don't do it because I sincerely believe it'll get you fired. You're going to give up picks you shouldn't give up. Your fan base is not going to be excited. They're going to be mad. And if Jimmy Garoppolo has any success and Kirk Cousins continues to be Kirk Cousins, you're going to be in trouble. Don't do it. Resist the urge. Put the Kirk Cousins down. Is that fair, Vish?
Yeah, I agree.
Say that? Don't do it, dude. I know you want to. Don't do it, Kyle. Not you. Dude is Kyle. Kyle is dude. I talked to Kyle. Kyle's my
I got it.
He's my dog.